It's been a while since I've made any videos about Russian news. This is not because I've lost interest, far from it. This is more because I just haven't seen much that I felt like sharing. But this morning, this Office of Director of National Intelligence document was declassified, at least partially declassified, about Kremlin-linked assassinations. The actual document dates to 2016, so it's dated. It doesn't include some of the more recent prominent assassination attempts on opposition figures, but nonetheless quite interesting. And I will read it to you. The Office of the Director of National Intelligence, Washington, D.C., November 15, 2024, DEOM 2021-00004. This letter is written to Jason Leopold, who I believe is a journalist who formerly worked for BuzzFeed News. And it gives his address, and it says, Mr. Leopold, this responds to your mandatory declassification review, MDR, request received by the Office of the Director of National Intelligence on March 3rd, 2021, requesting a declassification review of the intelligence community assessment prepared for the House and Senate Intelligence Committees on the use of political assassinations as a form of statecraft by the Russian Federation since January the 1st, 2000. This request was processed in accordance with Section 3.5 of Executive Order 13526, Classified National Security Information. ODNI located and reviewed the document and determined it may be released in part, with portions withheld under the following sections of the EO. 1.4b, which protects currently and properly classified foreign government information. 1.4c, which protects currently and properly classified intelligence activities, including cover action, intelligence sources or methods, or cryptology. 6.2d, which applies to information exempt from disclosure by statute, specifically 1. The National Security Act of 1947, as amended, Section 102A, IL, 50 U.S.C., I guess that's subsection 3024 IL, which protects information pertaining to intelligence sources and methods, and 2. The Freedom of Information Act, as amended, 5 U.S.C., subsection 552B7E, which protects information that would disclose investigative techniques or procedures. Please be advised that the remainder of the request relating to any and all communications exchanged between various ODNI components does not to meet the sufficient specificity criteria as required by 32 CFR subsection 2001.33 A to I, the implementing guidance for the EO. This section of the CFR requires a request to be of sufficient specificity to allow an agency to locate the records sought with reasonable amount of effort. Requests such as this for broad types of information are not valid MDRs and therefore cannot be processed. As such, ODNI did not process that portion of the MDR request. If you are not satisfied with ODNI's response to your request, you may administratively appeal this decision by submitting a written request to the Chief Information Management Office, Office of the Director of National Intelligence, Washington, D.C. 20511, or ODNI_FOIA at odni.gov. The appeal correspondence should be clearly marked Mandatory Declassification Review Request Appeal, and must be postmarked or electronically transmitted within 60 days of the date of this letter. If you have any questions regarding the response, you may contact ODNI IMO at ODNI_FOIA at odni.gov or 703-275-1313. Sincerely, Gregory Koch, Chief Information Intelligence Office. Oh, man. Sorry that was a little bit dry, but I figured I would read the entire document as it is presented. National Intelligence Council Sense of the Community Memorandum. This is an IC-coordinated memorandum. SOCM 2016-035C, 11 July 2016. Kremlin-ordered assassinations abroad will probably persist. We assess that the Russian government will continue to use its intelligence services and other loyal entities to assassinate suspected terrorists as well as individuals abroad whom it deems a threat to core national security interests or the security of President Vladimir Putin's regime. Our confidence level for this judgment is high, based on the official Russian statements and the findings of foreign governments in countries where assassinations have taken place. Russia targets for killing those it considers terrorists, especially North Caucasus extremists and select opposition figures. The first clear case in the Putin era of Moscow directing an assassination abroad occurred in 2004 in Qatar, where 2 Russian military intelligence officers were convicted of killing Chechen leader Zelimkhan Yandarbiev, designated by the United States and the United Nations as a terrorist. The Russian government has been open about using assassinations as part of its counterterrorism policy. President Putin in June 2006 stated publicly that he had directed Russia's security services to kill people who murdered 4 Russian diplomats in Iraq. Also in 2006, the Russian legislature amended the law on countering terrorism. Then Russian Defense Minister Sergei Ivanov publicly stated that the law gave the services a legal basis for killing terrorists outside of Russia. In addition, Moscow probably selectively targets individuals it perceives as political threats to Putin. Moscow almost certainly ordered the 2006 murder in London of former Russian Federal Security Service, that is the FSB, officer Alexander Litvinenko, by means of the radioactive isotope polonium, the clearest example of a political killing. The official British inquiry into Litvinenko's death, which parallels the findings of the U.S. intelligence community, concluded that Russian intelligence probably carried out the assassination. The Russian government probably has been involved in targeted or other high-profile figures for politically based assassinations, but we have only a low to moderate confidence in this judgment because there is less direct and credible evidence of Kremlin direction than in the case of Litvinenko. An analysis of intelligence reporting on known and suspected Russian assassination attempts indicates that the Kremlin targets individuals from the following categories: intelligence defectors or dissidents, whose actions the Kremlin considers to have gone beyond acceptable limits or to have the potential to do so. Litvinenko, for example, was not only a traitor in Kremlin eyes, but may have crossed a threshold by working with British and Spanish intelligence against Russia. Moreover, Litvinenko had publicly accused Putin of pedophilia, as well lodging accusations for years that Putin ordered the 1999 Moscow apartment bombings as a pretext to renew the conflict in Chechnya. Russian businessman Alexander Perepilnichny, I'm afraid I don't know how to pronounce that name very well, was reportedly assassinated with a biological toxin in the UK in 2012, shortly before he was scheduled to testify about a Kremlin tax fraud network, according to press reports, suggesting that he may also fall into this category. Political and opposition leaders in key former Soviet republics that are deemed a threat. A key example is former President of Ukraine, Viktor Yushchenko, who suffered a near-fatal poisoning in 2004. His supporters concluded that Russian intelligence introduced the chemical dioxin into his food when he was a presidential candidate advocating for Ukraine's integration with the West. Insubordinate separatists in Ukraine. At least some key separatist figures in Ukraine's Donbass region, who resisted Kremlin orders, such as Oleksandr Bednov, have probably been killed at Moscow's behest, reflecting Russia's priority on maintaining control over the region. We assess that Putin probably authorizes assassinations of high-profile figures abroad. The official British inquiry into Litvinenko's murder concluded that Putin probably approved it based upon a review of physical evidence and decision-making matters related to the security services. Putin's role reflects concern over the potential for significant political repercussions. However, Putin probably has given the head of the Chechen Republic, Ramzan Kadyrov, who is fiercely loyal to Putin, latitude to kill Chechens abroad. Most killings attributed to Kadyrov's operatives have been shootings, whereas those we judge to have been conducted by Russia's security services have involved a range of methods, including poisoning. We assess that Russia has the capability to assassinate individuals using chemical and biological agents, leveraging long-standing efforts dating back to the Soviet era. The development of chemical or biological agents with lower risk of attribution might tempt the Kremlin to consider assassinating individuals. Moscow tracks dissidents and defectors. Well, that's the end of the memo. It's rather short, and as you can see, it's got a decent amount of redaction in it. It doesn't really tell anything new or surprising. You know, it's long been suspected that Russia has assassinated people, and they've certainly used Kadyrov's men, that is, the Kadyrovtsi. Interestingly, it doesn't mention some of the more prominent assassinations from the past, but like Anna Polovitskaya, I believe was her name. But yeah, and it certainly doesn't include the two most prominent poisonings of the recent past, that is Alexei Navalny, who was poisoned in 2020. Obviously, that would be impossible to include in 2016. Or Vladimir Karamurza, who was poisoned in 2015 and 2017. Just interesting seeing an official government document on it. Anytime anything's declassified, it's fairly interesting to some extent. So hope you enjoyed it, and have a nice day.